PILT was started in 1976 as a mechanism to help offset for local governments that they cannot collect property taxes on federal lands. This is considered by county governments to be really an obligation by the federal government because they are the largest landholder in the country, and it's incumbent upon the federal government to contribute something to the local communities where public lands are and where counties have to provide services to both residents and visitors alike. For this year, PILT was funded at $553 million approximately, which was a record funding level, and we certainly appreciated all the effort that our congressmen and senators put into ensuring that that happened. This PILT payments go to provide all sorts of services for local governments, including contributing to search and rescue operations, emergency management, road and bridge maintenance, health care for county-owned hospitals. Some of the funding can go towards that, education as well. So this program is extremely important, and it's definitely a meaningful program to our public lands counties. Additionally, we want to talk about the Secure Rural Schools program. This is a program similar to PILT that was set up in 2000. We're going to have Senator Wyden here in a few minutes to speak on that. He's actually the senator that founded the program 18 years ago through legislation, and we were lucky to get a 2-year reauthorization included in the omnibus spending package along with the PILT funding. The Secure Rural Schools program was set up to help offset the loss in timber receipt revenue for national forest counties after the spotted owl listing and a lot of other environmental regulations came down the pike and really limited the amount of timber that was harvested off of our national forests. County governments traditionally get 25% of those revenues for timber harvests, and so now that those receipts have kind of have gone down over the past 20 or so years, we've been pushing to ensure that Secure Rural Schools will continue. Our first speaker has actually just walked in, and apologize for pointing that out just as you sat down, Senator. But Commissioner Bousman, would you like to come up and introduce your senator to us?
Thank you, Jonathan, and it is my honor as a commissioner from Wyoming to be able to introduce our senior senator from Wyoming, Senator Mike Enzi. Senator Enzi is a longtime supporter of the PILT program. In Wyoming, for example, Wyoming counties receive a little over $30 million in PILT funding and in almost $5 million in SRS funding. PILT stands for, and the senator reminded me of this years ago, don't call it PILT, call it payment in lieu of taxes. And I just remembered that, Senator. Thank you. Senator Enzi is chairman of the Budget Committee, sets the overall spending caps that the appropriations people need to work with. He's a strong supporter of active forest management and forest reform and ensuring that county governments have a voice in public lands management. The senator signed on to the letter to the Senate Appropriations Committee chairman supporting full funding of PILT for the fiscal year 2019. Please help me welcome Senator Mike Enzi from Wyoming.
Thanks, Joel, for that introduction, and for all of the times that you come to Washington representing this group and testifying before different committees. You do an outstanding job of that, bringing the message, and I want to thank all of you for the opportunity to speak about the importance of payments in lieu of taxes and a little bit on Secure Rural Schools. I do make a point out of the fact that when you're talking to each other, you can condense it down to PILT. But when you're talking to other people, please call it payment in lieu of taxes. I mean, that's the message. It's in lieu of taxes. And we've got to get that message across. That's what we have to sell it on back here. And Those are really critical to the West. I know that most of my counties in Wyoming, he mentioned $30 million. In some states, that's nothing. But in Wyoming, that's about 30% of each county's budget. So think about taking away 30% of your budget, and that's what we're talking about there. That's what you have to run your government on. And I used to be a mayor of a town that was having an energy boom. And so it tripled in size while I was mayor, which is a lot of sewer and water and streets and sidewalks and other things. But that's local government. And you are local government. You live with the people that you work for and with. And that's a tougher job than being here in Washington. You know, we're a long distance from all of that stuff. I get back regularly, but it's just not the same. You know, when you're in your position, you go out to dinner, oh, by the way, I got this little problem. Don't get up and solve it right now. But by golly, when they see you tomorrow, you better have been working on it already, or they're going to be upset. That's local government. And anybody that says that you can't fight local government's never tried it, because you have to be responsive. And a lot of times what they're bringing you are just good common sense ideas. That's what I try to bring back from Wyoming when I go back almost every weekend, is so that I can get those common sense ideas. Doesn't go very far in Washington, though. But we're working on it. So that's payment in lieu of taxes. And one of the other fights that I have in Wyoming is we have people that have leases in the forest and on BLM land, and they keep escalating those cost of those leases. So I keep trying to make the case that if the value of the land went up for the cabin, the value of the land went up for the taxes. And so they should be paying more taxes in lieu of, if they're going to get that extra revenue from the person that's leasing part of the land. And trying to get that to come across that, you know, taxes are based on some kind of value, and they're not meeting their own value qualifications. And if you'll help me with that argument, it will help a lot. Of course, and that was first established, there were a lot of states that were left out of that, or a lot of states that have very little federal land. And in Wyoming, we're kind of concerned about how that happened, and did a little study of the history on it, and found out that the original colonies at one point had some federal land. And they said, no, wait a minute, that should be our land. And so they all got together, and since they were the whole government, they got the land. Well, later on, the states between the 13 original colonies and the Mississippi River said, wait a minute, we've got federal land. How come they don't have federal land? And they took their case to the states that didn't have federal land and joined together and got it changed so that they didn't have federal land to speak of either. Well, later, the ones on the other side of the Mississippi River, as far over as North and South Dakota, if you draw a line straight down there, got together with the other side of the Mississippi River and said, wait a minute, why do we have federal land and you don't? And again, they got that coalition and they changed it. Well, I don't know how successful that kind of a move is going to be now for the rest of the United States, but what we have is payment in lieu of taxes. And we've got to continue to explain that and enforce that and make sure that the revenues come through to the states. So that's what I'm here to tell you today. Well, same with the Secure Rural Schools money, although that one could be solved, I think, if we had a little better stewardship and conservation of our forests. We're burning them up right now. And incidentally, in Wyoming, we really don't like those Washington and Oregon fires because they obscure our beautiful mountains. So we're willing to work with them to get some things in place that will cut down on the number of forest fires and increase the number of board feet that we can sell for bringing down the price of houses. But in the meantime, we want to make sure that the Secure Rural Schools money goes to the counties. Again, it's an important part of the financing for them. Now, I really appreciate all of you being here and for having the discussions today, but those discussions aren't worth anything unless you get all slavered up and go out there and talk with passion to your senators and your congresspeople. I mean, that's the purpose of getting together, is to get armed well enough that you can go and fight for your cause out there. And it does make a difference. They do want to hear from you. Now, in some of the offices, you'll only get to talk to staff people. Don't worry about it. They help make those decisions, otherwise they wouldn't be meeting with you. So be sure and lay the whole pitch on them too. And actually, the staff people are also selling to other staff people in other offices. So they're an important contact too. But go see your senator, go see your representatives, and talk to whoever you can in those offices. So you can make a difference. That's what you're here for. That's what'll cover the cost of your trip. So please go out and do that work and help us out. Those of us who have the federal land and work on the payment in lieu of taxes really need help on those arguments. We'll continue to fight for it, and you don't have to pay any attention to whatever shows up in the president's budget about it, because that's just a list of pretty good suggestions. It comes to my budget committee, and we'll keep those things going. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman Enzi. We appreciate you coming here today, and we appreciate all the work that you've done for public lands counties over the years. Up next, we're going to have some remarks from Senator Wyden from Oregon, but real quick, I'd like to ask Commissioner Beveridge to come up and introduce her senator.
Hi there. New commissioner from Oregon, Eastern Oregon. Just want to thank all of the people that are here, all the commissioners that are here that care about our public lands in Oregon. There's many of our counties that have 97%, 92% public land. Our county has 48%, and just our basic services depend on payment in lieu of taxes and the SRS. So these are very important issues, and we appreciate that the people that don't have these public lands are listening to us and understanding how important they are to us. Want to introduce Senator Wyden from Oregon. He's with the Finance, Energy, and Natural Resource Committee, Budget, Intelligence, Joint Committee on Taxation. He's been a strong supporter of PILT. He's actually created the Secure Rural Schools program in 2000 and was a lead negotiator in the 2-year SRS reauthorization that we just got through the Omnibus bill. He signed onto a letter to the Senate Appropriations Committee Chairman supporting full funding of PILT in 2019. He's also working closely with county officials, NACo, and other interested parties on a permanent solution for SRS. I just want to thank him for being here and his support on these important issues of the counties. Thank you.
Commissioner, thank you, and I so appreciate the kind words, and it's such a crazy day in the Senate. I'm going to make this a filibuster-free zone and be really brief. You've also got Congressman Stewart here, and let me give you my sense of where things are, because things have changed very dramatically since 2000, when then Senator Larry Craig and I wrote the Secure Rural Schools bill. And as you know, it's been a challenge over the years to say, look, we need two things here. We need a safety net, which is what Secure Rural Schools is and what PILT is, but we also need to use our natural resources. We got to get the harvest up. We want to make sure people can make a living on the land. So it's really been a battle over the last few years because, as we know, as society gets more urbanized, that it becomes harder and harder to find those votes for secure rural schools and PILT and the like. So our basic proposition, as it has been now, at least for the 2 decades I have been involved in this, is that these two programs, they are separate. By the way, the history is, one year, we had senators who kind of, for budget purposes, wanted to put them together, so we did it just to get the money, but these are two separate programs, payment in lieu of taxes and secure rural schools, but together they make the partnership that allows the federal government to fulfill its promise to Americans who basically have the federal government owning most of their land. They do it different back in Connecticut and New Jersey because the federal government doesn't own most everything. So it's private property, you sell a piece of private property, they pay taxes, go about their business. We can't do that in the rural West, in the South, where the federal government owns so much of the land. So I have been, as Commissioner Beveridge noted, a strong supporter of PILT. I will always be there. We see that in rural Idaho, for example, where they're particularly concerned about PILT. I also think that we ought to say to ourselves, because of this roller coaster ride we've been on with respect to secure rural schools, it is time to take a fresh approach with respect to the secure rural schools part of the partnership. And I have shared this with some of you, but we'll be asking your views more in the days ahead. And with Senator Mike Crapo, Republican of Idaho, I've said, look, we got this 2-year window on secure rural schools. People didn't think we could get it. You know, 1 year I had to sell off the helium reserve to get the money. You probably remember that. I mean, it's been that kind of roller coaster. So what Mike Crapo and I are doing is kicking around a new idea for secure rural schools. And the heart of it is to establish a permanent endowment fund to provide stable, increasing, reliable funding for county services, roads, and schools. And under what we are considering, and I've told Senator Crapo that we would be discussing this with you today, after Congress makes an initial investment into the fund, the principal would be invested and the interest would be paid out to the counties. As the timber harvests grow, because that's how we see it, we're multiple use people, we want the harvest to grow and we want the safety net. As the harvest grows, so will the endowment, as the endowment will collect the current revenue sharing payments, and it would also mean, due to the initial seed money provided by the Congress, as well as gap funding, that at no time would county payments drop below the first year's payment. So the point really is, we have begun to share this with all of you. NACo is so important to these debates. We're just accepting the proposition that nothing but stable and predictable funding will be acceptable from now on. We want to free you from the who knows what happens in the timber market and the appropriations process. And also, and I'll wrap up with this because the Congressman's been very patient, we are looking at giving more flexibility to the counties to fund projects that you want to fund. Gone would be, say, the limitations of Title II funding, and in its place would be a grant program to provide funding for projects important to your county. So we're going to want to hear from all of you, but I just will close that a lot of the senators, and I was a young senator with a full head of hair and rugged good looks, a lot of senators said when we wrote Secure Rural Schools, how'd Ron and Craig, how'd they talk us, into this? Where'd this all come from? This big program. We didn't know, about it. And a whole lot of those senior members, I think, barely didn't know my name, barely knew my name, let alone that I was writing a law with Senator Craig, who was quite influential. My bottom line is, let's all work together. You notice I have not mentioned Democrats and Republicans in this. No, it's not a partisan thing. Probably our biggest single challenge from the last 20 years is more and more of America gets urbanized. That's our big, challenge. And I don't know, people somehow think food falls out of the sky. They don't think it's like grown on land and farmers and all the rest. So what we want to do is get you out of this perpetual roller coaster where your budget decisions are these perils of Pauline routine, where at the last minute you call up Congressman Stewart, who's obviously a good man, and he's been waiting for this senator to stop talking away and all the rest. Enough said. We've got to get you off that roller coaster to some permanent funding. That's what Senator Crapo and I will be looking at. We'll be sharing it with you, and it's been a wonderful ride. When people ask me about my time in public service, first thing I mentioned is how proud I am of writing that Secure Rural Schools bill. Times have changed. We're going to have to change. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Senator. We appreciate you taking the time to address the group, and we appreciate all the hard work that you've put into SRS and PILT over the years. Thank you. Up next, we will transition over to Congressman Stewart, but before we do, I'd like to ask Commissioner Pearson to come up and introduce her congressman to us.
So this is kind of strange that you introduce one of your very good trusted friends as the speaker in a national setting. But Congressman Stewart has slipped into this role the last few years, and he's been a hero for rural Utah and the rural counties. And I can't say enough about, his history and his demeanor. He's not afraid to have the tough talks and step in where he's needed. So I'm going to turn the time over to Congressman Stewart.
All right, it's good to be with you. Tommie, thank you. She has become a dear friend. We're a little late. I was walking over with Tom, and I was a little late, and I said, I'm not really worried because I think you guys are going to be kind of late, and it turned out, but I'm going to help get you back on time. So some of you know I was an Air Force pilot. I could fly a 20-hour mission and drop my bombs on target plus or minus 1 second. So I'm going to start my timer, and in 3 minutes, I'm going to end here. So I got to share things with you briefly and quickly and give, again, my friend Tom some time. 3 things I want you to know, and they're important. The first thing is I want you to know that I am one of you. I grew up farming. I grew up ranching. I grew up in a town of 295 people. I grew up where we went to a little tiny school with a class of about 12 of us. And I understand secure rural schools and some of these funding issues are incredibly important to rural West. If you look at the district that I represent, I have downtown Salt Lake City, which some of those folks have absolutely lost their minds. Very, very liberal, but I go south and it's very rural. Some of the most rural parts of our country, and I feel a true obligation because this is my background to represent and to fight for them and to fight for you. The second thing I want you to know is I can't do it by myself. None of us can. Donna, Commissioner Beveridge, you were in our office today. You brought me, I have it with me, some ideas and your proposals for how you help in Oregon, which would assist all of us. It's going to take all of us working together to make some progress here. It's not just me, it's not just previous senators. We need your ideas and your inputs as well, which is why these meetings are important. That's why it's important for you to go spend some time in your congressman and your senator's office. You can make a difference. Please keep doing that. And then the third thing is this, and this is actually good news. We have an opportunity to make a difference here. If Hillary Clinton had been elected president, for a number of reasons, we would be very frustrated. But we have a different president, we have a different administration. My former chief of staff, Dr. Steed, Brian Steed, is the acting director of the BLM. He understands these issues. Ryan Zinke, a good friend of mine, both of us previous military, we have a lot in common. He understands these issues, and we have been able to make some progress. And then the last thing is this. I'll tell you 3 things about me that I want you to know. I'm one of you. We need to work together. The third thing is I sit on the Appropriations Committee and on the Interior Subcommittee where these things will focus. I'd love to talk to you about my work on Intel. I mean, that's fascinating stuff, but that's the thing that the Interior is the work that affects my constituents back home. $500 million in PILT, $35 million increase over the previous year. $15 million for the wild horses, which is a huge problem for many of us out west. And we've got to get our Senate colleagues on board with that. Please go bang on Lisa Markowski's desk because we need her help. We will continue to fight. We appreciate your friendship. This will go on, but we will fight with you as long as we have to get where we need to be, plus or minus 2 seconds. Oh well. Thank you. It's good to be with you. Appreciate what you do.
Thank you, Congressman. We appreciate all the effort that you've put in on the Appropriations Committee to ensure that we get full funding of PILT. Up next, we have Supervisor Randy Hanvelt from Tuolumne County. He is our new Public Lands Committee Chairman, and he's here to introduce his Congressman, Mr. McClintock.
As he said, I'm Randy Hanvelt. I come from rural California. Most people in the country think rural California is an oxymoron. Most people in California think it's an oxymoron. Privileged to introduce a congressman who represents 10, count them, 10 rural counties in California. He knows where rural California is. He knows where rural values are. He knows what rural needs are. He chairs the Federal Lands Subcommittee of Natural Resources. And I've had the privilege of testifying of that committee, and I tell you, he's carrying the ball for us. It's a privilege to introduce my Congressman, Tom McClintock.
Thank you, Randy, and thanks for having me here. You know, when we talk about PILT funding, we shouldn't lose the sight of the fact it is a very, very poor substitute for the revenues generated locally by healthy economic activity and federal revenue sharing. Our ultimate objective should not be to institutionalize PILT, but to restore active management of our federal lands and a healthy balance between federal land ownership and productive private ownership of the lands within each county in this nation. My congressional district's in the heart of the Sierra Nevada of California. We once had a thriving local economy based on sound forest management on the federal estate. The sale of excess federal timber provided a steady stream of revenues to our local governments. 25% of the proceeds of our federal timber auctions went directly to the local governments, and we had a thriving timber industry, including 149 sawmills in our state, providing both direct jobs and spin-off jobs, which meant higher sales and property taxes to local governments and higher income taxes to the state government. The proper management of the forest also meant a healthy forest environment, as we could match timber density to the ability of the land to support it. 45 years ago, we began enacting laws that have made the management of our forests all but impossible. We've seen an 80% reduction in timber harvested off the federal lands in that period, and a concomitant increase in the amount of acres destroyed by forest fire. Of the 149 sawmills operating in 1981 in California, only 27 remain today. So PILT's a very poor substitute for this economic activity and revenue sharing. The second issue is the disproportionate size of the federal estate in many counties throughout the West. You know, the federal government owns just 0.7% of the entire state of New York. It owns just 1% of the state of Illinois. It owns just 1.8% of the state of Texas. But you go farther west and you see the problem. The federal government owns and controls 62% of the state of Alaska, 2/3 of Utah, 4/5 of the state of Nevada. It owns nearly half of my state of California. In one county in my district, Alpine County, the federal government owns 96% of the land. And the people from the eastern half of the United States have no idea what that means. That's all land that's off the local tax rolls. It's all land that carries increasingly severe restrictions on public use and access. which means it's generating very little economic activity to these regions, and often federal ownership means that federal land use policies are in direct contravention to the wishes of the local communities that are entangled with it. So that is the other issue that we have to address. I was just going to mention briefly Tuolumne County, Randy's County is in my district, includes much of Yosemite National Park. It's one of the biggest recipients of PILT funding in my district. The federal government owns 3/4 of the land of that county. Tuolumne gets about $2.2 million in PILT funding out of roughly $150 million in operating revenue. So the federal government sits on 75% of its potential property tax base, and yet it compensates Tuolumne with just 1.5% of its budget with PILT funding. That's not enough, it's not adequate, and we've got to fix the fundamental problem. We've been called for votes, and I know you're waiting to hear from the Natural Resources Chairman, Rob Bishop, who's literally written the book on this subject, so I think I will conclude my remarks there and hand it off to him. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chairman McClintock. We appreciate all of your efforts to improve the county-federal relationship and all you've done to also improve the federal landscape. Thank you. Up next, we're going to have Chairman Bishop from the House Natural Resources Committee. But before that, I want to ask Commissioner Lytle to come up and offer a brief introduction.
If I put this up here, I'm afraid I'll have to put it back down for the chairman. But, so I'm Jack Lytle from Daggett County, Utah. We're roughly 446,000 acres and 900 people. So we're trying not to be the elbow in his ribs very often, but sometimes that happens. But we're very, very grateful for the role that Chairman Bishop has as overseeing the House Natural Resources Committee and a strong advocate for the county voice in federal acquisition and management decisions. Additionally, the chairman helped lead the effort to pass active forest management through the U.S. House of Representatives and sign a letter to the House Appropriations Chairman supporting full funding of PILT for FY 2019. And he also led meetings between local officials and the Department of Interior in Salt Lake to discuss the Interior's reorganization plan. These are tiny things compared to what he's doing for all of us. And I'd like to introduce the representative, Chairman.
Thank you, Jack, for that introduction, and you obviously lost the straw. You got the short straw, you had to do it. Look, I appreciate the opportunity of being with you simply because all of you who work on the county level understand what government is really about, and you are far more effective than I am. You also have a tougher job than I do because everyone knows what you do and they know your phone numbers. You don't know what I do and you can't get hold of me, and I like that. We'll keep it that way. The other problem, twofold problems. Number one is they just called votes. So in 4 minutes, I've just got to run in over there anyway, which is actually why McClintock quit. It wasn't for me. He knew he was going to go over to vote. But between the last speakers you've heard everything there is to say about this issue. PILT was always supposed to be a short-term solution. It will be a short-term solution. There are long-term solutions, but PILT will be a short-term solution for the rest of my life and probably for most of yours. Kind of like SRS was supposed to be a 20-year program, and it's going to be the rest of my lifetime and the rest of yours too. So the issue is it needs to be fully funded. When I first came here, and it was a Republican administration, they conveniently always underfunded PILT. They would ask for like $250 million, knowing that we would up it to 300, and then they could look really physically conservative and know you got the money in the end. We are now upping that to easily we're around 500 million, even though once again the administration plays the same game of lowballing it because they know we will up it. But what McClintock and I am assuming that that Stewart also talked to you about is if you add the value of the land, the federal lands within your states, and you taxed it at the cheapest sagebrush rates possible, it shouldn't be $500 million. It should be like $1.2 billion or $1.3 billion. That's the actual value of it if you could tax the land. Which means when we're talking about full funding of PILT, yeah, we're all for it. We need to do it, but we need to go beyond that in some particular way. Mr. McClintock talked about actually giving you control of the land back, which would be far more efficient. It's not going to happen, at least in the next few years, as now more and more people are talking about how they don't want to give back any land anywhere, which means what we need to talk about is changing kind of the strategy we have so that people have to realize there's a difference between federal land and public land. And public land is very positive and can be used very productively. Federal land has to be used the same way. And if there is efforts to try and stop recreation and opportunities of accessing of land, it's always on the federal land that access stops first. They're the ones who are the most committed into actually screwing up lives of the people who are around them. So that's one of the reasons why, yeah, I'd like the BLM to move out west so that you'd finally have people working in BLM who actually live in the area in which BLM decisions are made, and they would have a total firsthand understanding of what is going on. They would be part of the community, and their attitude and atmosphere would be much more effective and efficient in making sure that public lands and federal lands are always available for people to use. And that has to be the most important process. And that cattle actually add to the benefit and the use of the lands. They don't detract from it. In fact, we're talking about carbon sequestration. If you really want to take carbon out of the air, cattle has to be part of that mix. We're also talking, mentioned briefly about Resilient Forestry Act. I want you to know as you're going around meeting with some of your good friends in the Senate, friends in Senate, that's kind of, all right. The Resiliency Act that Westerman came up with was a result of talking to the Obama administration Forest Service on what tools do you need actually to manage the forest. Their goal is to treat 20% of the federal forest that is in jeopardy every year. They get to 2%. Now, what's stopping you from reaching that goal? They gave us the ideas. Trump administration came in, we went back to them again, they gave us the same ideas. That bill was exactly what the Forest Service needs to treat the land, to minimize the forest and the disastrous forest fires that we're having. It's passed the House twice in different forms. It still is in front of for the Farm Bill to be added into it. The Senate needs to pick it up, and once again, here's where the problem, because you're all from the West, because you understand these issues. The problem is the West is not where the problem takes place. It's senators who live in the East that just don't have an idea. They don't have a clue. Look, my air quality this summer, and I'm going to screw up my votes, I'm sorry, and I'm wasting your time. The air quality in my home this summer was the worst that has ever been in the history of the state of Utah. We have bad air in the winter, never in the summer. This year it was. Our particulate matter was in the unhealthy category for most of August, and every one of those particulate matters that I was breathing in came from California. As California burned to destruction, I got the airflow brought it into Utah, so I got to breathe it. That's the reality of not doing something to try and save our forests before they burn. And I'm sorry, in the East, they simply don't care. So as you're talking to them, would you please realize that, yeah, some of their favorite special interest groups would not have the ability of suing as much. And yeah, they make their money by suing the federal government. But sometimes lives that were lost and homes that were destroyed and my air that I was breathing in and the firefighter in Utah that was killed in this process, that is more important than special interest groups having the ability of suing the federal government as a way of making money. So if you'd hit them about that, I'd appreciate it. And my staffer's back there cringing because I wasn't going to talk about any of that when I came over here. I apologize. You've got a full slate. Once again, thank you for what you're doing. You live on the ground. You understand what it means to have federal lands. You understand that there is a lot of good that can come from that if you got the right land manager and a lot of heartache that can come if you get an arrogant land manager who doesn't understand what the hell is going on. So thank you for working with them. We're going to try and keep it in here. And once again, as things change, our strategy has to change. Yeah, full funding for PILT, that's given. We got to go beyond that. We got to make sure that local counties actually get compensated for the cost of having the wonderful joy of an absentee landlord in your counties. Anyway, thank you so very much, and I apologize for running.
Thank you, Chairman Bishop. We appreciate you coming by today, and you've done some wonderful work on behalf of county governments as chairman of the Natural Resources Committee. So thank you for all that you've done on our behalf over the years. So the House is called votes, and our last speaker is on the floor voting, Congressman Westerman. So I'll turn the program over to some of our county officials. Supervisor Martin, do you want to come on up?
Let me just come to here. Can you guys, everybody hear me from here? What I really want to add to the conversation, we have heard what we need to hear, and we've heard the direction coming from some of the congressmen that's right in line with what we're asking them today. The full funding, the permanent funding, necessary if we can't get the land put back to work in very short order. We've got to have a safety net of PILT and SRS and so forth. But what I think we're looking at here from a bigger picture, to me, it's what I think of as the urban-rural divide. And I believe it's getting wider, and it's getting harder to bridge. And when we hammer on PILT and SRS, it's a vignette of what we have ahead of us, methinks, in the rural conversation. That there's several issues that we need to bridge that gap with. And if we can bridge it with PILT and SRS, we have a bridge to get to the other issues. And I mostly want us thinking about what else this puts us all together. But I'll tell you that if we'll truly look at our rural issues, there's things out there that are glaring at us that we've got to take our heads up, look at, and tackle. So my plea is, through the rest of this year, come to me, send me, visit with me, call me, whatever. Things that we can together make as big a difference as we finally have on PILT and SRS. It's taken us a long time. But it's like Chinese water torture in a way. It's drip, 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 and we finally get some progress. But that's mostly it, Jonathan. I'm so pleased that so many of us showed up. I'm so happy that we've been able to visit with the ones that we have. The message is going back and forth. But I also wonder if we shouldn't turn our attention now onto, as one of the congressmen was saying, the folks that don't understand this issue. That we spend a lot of time today talking to folks that do. It may be time to turn our attention to folks that don't, but in some way. Anyhow, you all, thank you for being here, and thanks for the time to make a few words here. Jonathan?
Thanks, Supervisor. Up next, I'd like to once again welcome Commissioner Joel Bousman from Sublette County, Wyoming, to offer a few remarks and tell his county's story about why these programs are so important.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. Good afternoon. My name is Joel Bousman, Commissioner from Sublette County, Wyoming. I also serve as immediate past president of Western Interstate region of NACo. I'm here today to talk about secure rural school payments and why they're important to my county, as why SRS is relevant to the PILT discussion as well. Historically, the federal government, and we've already heard this, has in the past shared 25% of the timber harvest revenue from the national forest with the local counties to help offset lost property taxes and support the duty of the county to help provide the infrastructure for all this activity to occur in the first place. Then when we started facing steep reductions in the timber revenue sharing payments because of national policies that limited revenue-generating activities, one word, spotted owl. That's when it all started. SRS was first enacted in 2000 as a critical safety net because of the limit in the timber harvest. For fiscal year 2017, SRS provided approximately $280 million to more than 720 forest counties across 41 states. The program expires at the end of fiscal year 2018. NACo, of course, is encouraging members of Congress to find a long-term solution, that's what we've been talking about, to support funding. Over 9 million school children rely on SRS to keep teachers in their classroom, and counties need SRS funds to meet their governing missions. Counties use SRS for more than schools. They also provide needed funding for transportation, emergency services, search and rescue, law enforcement, all those activities that we as counties provide on federal land. In my county, Sublette County, Wyoming, we use approximately $700,000 in SRS funds, and almost all of that goes to support a contract helicopter for search and rescue mission on our public lands. We're in the Bridger Wilderness. A lot of people get lost, and it requires a lot of work to keep those people safe and get them to save their lives when they fall off a ledge trying to climb a mountain with they shouldn't have been trying in the first place, that sort of thing. SRS provides local governments with resources to protect and save lives in dangerous situations. Without SRS, my county would face budgetary issues in trying to provide those activities to continue to occur in a safe manner. Another important reason to find a solution for the SRS program is the PILT formula is tied directly to SRS. So any county that receives an SRS payment, it's deducted from the PILT payment. So, and we talked about this morning, if SRS goes away, then the PILT payments are spread out further, and so we lose that as well. This will force the Department of Interior to spread PILT payments thinner across the counties. So that is why we must fully fund PILT in 2019 and protect it with a long-term funding solution into the future to find a permanent bipartisan solution, what Chairman Bishop talked about. And thank you so much for joining us today, and it looks like we're pretty well down to us left here. Most of our congressmen have left, so anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chairman Bishop said that folks in the East don't get it, but I want to say that that's not necessarily true. We have we have a couple of Easterners here with us from the great state of North Carolina, Becky Garland, who is the county manager for Graham County, and Connie Orr, who is a county commissioner in Graham County, North Carolina. So I'd like to welcome both of them up to tell their county story to the group.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am Connie Orr. I'm Vice Chair of the Graham County Board of County Commissioners. I have a gentlewoman's agreement with Chairman Bishop to inform these fools out in the East in the next few months. So he did point that out. And honestly, we have wonderful representatives from our state who are very familiar with PILT. However, we have not reached out to many of the other states, and we will do that in the future. Graham County is home to Joyce Kilmer Memorial Forest, as well as the Appalachian, the Blue Ridge, and the Smoky Mountains. We are the gateway, one of the gateway counties to America's most visited park, and that is the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, with over 10 million visitors every year. Approximately 114,000 acres of Graham County land is managed by the Department of Interior and the U.S. Forest Service. Because of the U.S. Forest Service, North Carolina Forest Service, TVA, eastern band of Cherokee Indian reservations, and conservation trust lands, Graham County's taxable land mass is reduced to approximately 24% of our entire county. County commissioners are challenged to maintain a fair, equitable tax to provide essential services and support a sustainable living within our county borders. Although we are rich in natural resources, few of these are accessible to promote and provide normal growth and development. As you can see, this is not just an issue for our beautiful western states. Public lands touch all 49 states, not all, 49 of our United States, including those in the East Coast, where many small rural counties rely on payment in lieu of tax funding. In North Carolina alone, out of 100 counties, 80 of the counties are rural county where payment in lieu of taxes, the need for that runs deep. And I would like to ask County Manager and Finance Officer, now Becky Garland, to let you know some specific things we use PILT funding for.
Good morning. So as County Manager and Finance Officer, I'm very close to the dollar. I wanted to give you a little perspective of how payment in lieu of taxes impacts our county. In June, we received a little over $307,000 in PILT funding for the 17-18 fiscal year. That amount averaged to being about $2.70 per acre reimbursement. But a similar taxable acre in Graham County would yield us $12.87 per acre. So in other words, Graham County is able, if we were able to tax our entire land mass, our tax levy would grow from $6 million to $15 million. And my budget is $15.5 million. Reality, though, is we do receive the $300,000+ a year, and we are very grateful for that allocation because it does provide us the ability to keep our tax rate as low as possible. It saves our taxpayers 3 cents on the mill rate. It also enables me to purchase 3 ambulances, which have to be ALS equipped because we are so remote. And we do include and have in our county borders the tail of the dragon. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, where there's 311 curves in less than 20 miles. We're 45 minutes away from the closest critical access hospital and over 2 hours to a trauma center. So those ambulances have to be road ready and worthy to make it across those mountains. It also helps to pay 6 salaries for paramedics or sheriff's deputies. And this past year, it closed the gap in our school funding when we lost our SRS timber payment. Because SRS was not reauthorized, that gap created a huge deficit in the budget of our school system. So as you can see, our $307,000 goes a long way to help keep our budget safe.
Payment in lieu of taxes and secure rural school funds are vital to Graham County. So we thank you, friends and distinguished colleagues, for joining us today and ask that you continue to partner with us in supporting these programs. We ask that you share the message with fellow legislators to ensure permanent federal budget appropriations for payment in lieu of taxes and secure rural school funding. I would also like to thank NACo, Matt, Jonathan, and staff for getting this conference together. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. We appreciate you offering remarks today and coming to town and helping us in our advocacy efforts. Unfortunately, because of the House vote schedule, it looks like Congressman Westerman's going to miss the briefing this afternoon. So with that, we just want to say thank you. We appreciate you coming out and pounding the pavement and lobbying on behalf of these 2 incredibly important programs. And thanks again for coming out this afternoon.